Hello there and welcome back to those who are following this Joke Man channel. To those who are new to this channel, you may want to check out my channel introduction to gain a better understanding of this channel and my personal goals for this channel. Are you tired of your patio looking terrible? Weeds? You don't know what to do. Some people will take this and they just spray Roundup on it and let the weeds die. It still looks terrible and it'll still start growing in a year or two. Would you rather have it looking pristine all the time? Nice, level, graded well? And are you tired of your feet scuffing on the edges because the edges are all sharp? In this video, I plan on showing you a simple method of maintaining your paver patio and how to keep it clean, and it'll last for about 5 to 8 years. We've been here for 13 years and I figured out a method to physically make it last for at least 5 years. So let's get into the content of this video. So in this video, we will dive into how I maintain these pavers, and as my disclaimer, there are many methods used to lay pavers and to maintain them. But the method that I've used seems to work the best for my area. I'm in Tennessee. I've seen it work up in New Jersey, but it's pretty successful, and I find that the weeds stay down for about 5 to 8 years. And typically they're easy to pick and pull out as long as they're small. If you keep up with them, it'll look beautiful for years to come. The method I was taught is very simple for 4 reasons. The 3 main components, which is 3/8 aggregate, pavers, and the stone dust. Second, this type of patio system is not considered a permanent structure. So typically, no permit is required to lay a paver patio. Check with your local zoning and building codes to verify that. Third, it's simple to maintain, and you'll see that in this video. And fourth, longevity is about 5 to 8 years. Again, you see it in this video. So this paver system that I've been taught by a very good friend of mine up north, his idea is to keep all the stone dust as level as possible with very little gradation in between. As you can see, it looks even and it's consistent. You'll see that there is a little bit of wetness. I had washed it in with the hose, and you will see that a little later in this video. But if I back up here, this section is the section that I've cleaned out and I have ready to actually add the stone dust. So to maintain the weeds, or getting the weeds out of this paver system, it's very easy. You pick a screwdriver, which is the same width as the gap, or just a little shy of the gap that you set your pavers to. Mine I've set to about 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch, and it varies. There are some that are a little bit wider than others. It's not meant to be perfect. It's meant to look like it's been here for a while, but having it look pristine and new is really the ultimate goal. So to remove the weeds and such, it's easiest to just dig in and pop out about 3 to 4 inches worth of the stone dust that locks in between. That's if you have stone dust in between. I'll show you another system which uses another material to lock in the pavers. But once you pry up the roots, you can actually get all the roots out. You don't want any natural decaying material in the aggregate. You want only stone. So all this aggregate has material mixed in with it. And what I'm going to do is wash that off. You'll see that in a minute. But just keep going. Pry out all of the weeds. Make sure you wear gloves. The more you work with stone, the less fingerprints you have. It really wears your skin down very quickly. It's best to have full leather gloves. As you can see, this has been worn off doing this process. So my knuckle is starting to get raw. I'm trying to use my index finger more in this case because that has leather on it. I'll just work this a little bit. If it's a little too narrow, you can actually stick the screwdriver in and pry a little bit, and the actual paver will move and loosen up your aggregate. You can see I'm trying to hold on to as much as the weeds I can get. You can see I'm trying to hold on to as much of the weeds as I can get. You may want to use safety glasses because as you're above the paver, the area that you're working, when you dig out the stone and you catch the stone, it flips up the aggregate and you can get it in your eyes. So the best thing to do is have safety glasses on. Larger stones like this, in a small crack like that, you do not want that. I'll explain a little later. Notice I have a dustpan that I'm putting all this in because I don't want to mix it in with anything else here. I want to take every bit of natural decayable material and remove it from the cracks, because when you think about it, that decayable material turns into soil, which is what weeds grow in. So if you don't have much soil, the water, and the reason why we use the aggregate, so water will perforate down through the stone and dry out the stone that's in between the pavers themselves. So as it's dry, weeds cannot be established, so they won't start growing, or they'll barely start growing. So once you have small ones like this, you can actually pull them straight out and all the roots come out with it, because there's nothing for the roots to grab onto really. The stone and the aggregate is loose, and it's meant to be loose so that that happens, and water will perforate down through it. Thus the reason you probably don't need a permit, because it's a removable patio. It's not cemented in. So that's a disclaimer. Do not use cement in this aggregate, or it will be considered permanent, and that will require a permit. And I'm just going to get going here and catch back up with you in a little bit once I'm at the next stage. I want to point something out here. If you notice, the pavers to the left have very few weeds growing in between. Now, all of these pavers were put down approximately the same time, but all of these over here have rain hitting them. So once a little bit of soil is established, some leaves decay and rot down, whatever, it starts allowing the weeds to take. So maintaining this, if you even see the smaller weeds coming up, you could spray them with Roundup. Just squirt the weed itself and not spread too much Roundup, and that will keep your patio looking nice and new. Different technique, just poke and prod. I could do with a longer screwdriver or implement of some sort. What I'm making do with this one. It's working. So at the end of this time lapse, you could see I started from way over here and I worked my way over, and just about here I started having a lot of trouble, and it took me a lot longer to get just this little area. This is about 3 square feet of material to go through. And I forgot to mention that there is an easy way to get all of this to loosen up, and that is to wet it. Now, some people may think, why do it the hard way using a screwdriver? Why not excavate it by using a pressure washer? Well, water's the problem, along with the solution. The problem with the pressure washer is you're providing so much pressure and water that you can float these block. What I mean by that is the aggregate underneath will become viscous, and they'll start moving and become sloshy. And you don't want that. You want just enough water, break up the dirt and the stone, and to allow it an easy way for the roots to let go. So if you use a pressure washer, use it sparingly and actually go over it very, very quickly. And you can probably figure out a way to use a pressure washer to excavate the majority of the aggregate and weeds and everything and blow them off in a direction that you don't care about. In my case, I'm getting rid of everything out that way to the grass. I don't care if it goes off into the grass over there. But if you use a pressure washer on such a high pressure, then not only this area that you're working on will become sloshy, but the downhill side, which in my case is down over here, if this becomes very, very viscous because it has so much water added to it, then they'll start undulating. They'll start rising and decaying. And I'll get into that in a little bit, because I have a few over here, like this one. This is a big jump. And if you put your foot on it, you can actually feel this. And in some cases, to some people, it's annoying. And to other people, it's not bad. Here's another joint, which is low here and high here. And there's another key element to this whole thing. If you walk on pavers with your bare feet, a lot of the manufacturers leave edges on these pavers. Let me give you a close-up here. You can see this edge right here. That is very, very sharp. If you go across it this way with your foot, you can actually slice your foot. So you have to be very careful. Here's another one right here. These little bumps, they are very sharp. This whole edge is very sharp. So what do? How do you grind them down? How do you make them smooth like this? These have all been ground off. Well, there's a simple solution. Get one of the pieces that you've cut for your edges, and you grind it. You rub it. You just rub across it this way. And once you see the white, you know you've actually touched it. It's a lot of hard work, but if the manufacturer doesn't do what they call tumbling, then you're going to have these sharp edges. Even in here, this is a fake crack, and this is very rough to the hand. So put the corner in there and just rub it. Smooth it all down. And it makes it look real nice when it's all washed off. And you can see there are no sharp edges. or very few, if any. This is a sharp edge. I just haven't gotten down in there. But because my foot comes down like this, my foot's never really going to hit that edge in there. It'll hit this, but I've already rubbed this one off. You can see I've rubbed that one. So the next step to the process after excavating all of your weeds, and top inch or two of your aggregate, is to rinse it off and look for dirt or mud. You will see once I start spraying this, the color difference. The aggregate is a gray, a light gray to a dark gray. But when you hit dirt, it will be mud brown. You want to get rid of the mud brown, so you spray it away to your destination of where you don't care where your garbage goes. In my case, I'm spraying it that way because I want all my weeds and garbage to go off the end of the patio in that direction. So you keep the water pressure going in that direction. But you use just house water pressure. Or if you want to try a pressure washer on low pressure or spray rather than stream, then you might be able to do it. I don't like doing it. I have more control with just this style nozzle. So I don't like a fine stream. I like it just a little bit broad. And just keep waving it back and forth. And here, there's a little bit of mud. It's brown. And the amount of water that I'm using is not much, so the stone will not turn viscous. See, that's a little dirt, turning mud brown. So excavate it out and blow it that way. I'm actually lifting the aggregate out and blowing it that way because I'm going to fill this in. I'm going to add to it new aggregate. The new aggregate you can get from pretty much any quarry. What they call it around here is fines, screened. It's the very fine stuff. If you don't know what it is, or if they don't know what you're talking about, your best bet is to ask where it is and let me take a look at it. I'm going to set this to time lapse and go at it and get this complete. So as you saw, I worked my way that way with the water. Sprayed it down into the cracks just to give me enough lift, water lift on the dirt. And you saw many times it actually was brown. Over here there was a lot of brown coming up. But then when I got to this last about a foot and a half a section, it was coming up gray. So that's why I didn't excavate down in here. I only started from over here and worked my way back. Now, as I was excavating from this side, moving that way, I'm pushing the dirt that way, and you saw me grab a whisk broom and sweep in that direction. It's best to have a second person work with you. And as you create a puddle and as you spray in and excavate, they're sweeping right next to you with a push broom, pushing it off to that side. Because you saw me battle the wave of water coming back this way. The volume was so much, and the slope of this patio from here back goes in that direction, but I want the dirt to go that way. So I had to keep pushing it and swashing it in that direction, just whisk brooming it in that direction. This was the worst spot, and you could see the water's retaining there. That means there's still dirt there. So I have to do more excavation there. This might be a problem for me, because if there's too much dirt, then I'm gonna get down to the footer of this block and this block, and I don't want that. I don't want these to move. So I have to be very careful on how much I remove. You can still see there's silt and mud in here. So all of that has to come out. So now that I got a lot of this wet up here, all that set of weeds will come out pretty easily in comparison to what you saw right here in the weeding time lapse. So I will show, if you notice the difference between the height of this and the height of this. This one's higher. I don't know exactly which I will do, but I will show examples of how to raise a block and how to lower a block. So on this patio, you saw that I have a low spot right around in here. It's there for a purpose. It's there because there's a pipe that comes from the downspout right there around the corner. It comes out, it meets a pipe that goes down the middle of this walkway. And that perforated pipe is in a channel. So that follows down right down the middle of this walkway. Then there's another pipe that's behind the wall here. It has a footer drain for the wall. They both meet up down there in the grass beyond the end of the walkway. So where they meet up, the pipe continuing goes all the way down to a creek that's over there. So this whole walkway has a dip in the middle, and it's there for a purpose, so that the water will drain down into that pipe and go out. The water won't retain here and excavate the footer of the wall, or retain over here and excavate the footer for the patio. So that must be higher, and this must be higher. So if you take a 6-foot level and put it across, this is not 6 foot, but if you were to put a level across, you will see that there's a dip in the middle. So here we can see there's a couple little ants. I don't know if they have a home, but they love going into sand. That's the reason why we do not use sand in this. We use aggregate. This stone dust, this fine aggregate, is so large for a lot of the ants that they cannot excavate it. They cannot make little channels and such. They have to find natural little burrows and holes that they can go into, which it looks like they do have right there. But this is supposed to have, underneath this, is supposed to have some concrete mixed in with the aggregate. But it doesn't look like our contractor did that. Which is okay, because that will allow me to silt this back in. And what I mean by silt is when you wash the aggregate, or you get it wet, and you'll see that process later, the gray, that color that you see the water turn, is all the silt coming out of the aggregate. So when you wash that silt over here, it's the very, very fine aggregate, and it goes into the larger aggregate and creates a structure basically that is very similar to concrete. Even though you can take a screwdriver and poke at it and it loosens back up again, when it rains, it automatically silts in any open airspace. But this area here doesn't actually get water. And the reason why is the roof line. The roof line is about halfway down the middle of this walkway. I wanted that roof line to cover the whole walkway, but our contractor was not able to do it. By code, they could only come out 4 feet. So when it rains, the rain can come into about here, and that's the reason why from here up, there were no plants. And from here back, there were a lot of plants. So the aggregate or stone dust that I'm talking about is, some places will sell it in a bag similar to this, and it is just ultra fines, very tiny stones. I've gone to a quarry and had a whole bunch of these canisters, 5 gallon, 3 gallon, and what's nice is it keeps it all nice and dry, where that bag allows it to get wet. Well, through this process it started to rain. I have a easy up setup over the area that I'm working on just to keep the sun off of me, really. But I'm gonna leave it up to keep the rain off of it. This area, as you can see, rain is starting to collect. Hopefully the rain won't be so much that it'll start puddling here. If it starts puddling, the silt will rise to the surface and then start flowing down in this direction, which is what I do not want to have happen. So if it does happen, I want the silt to be up as high as possible. So I'm going to set this up for another time lapse, and I'm going to fill in from where I stopped as far as I can go up here to where I feel the mud starts, and then stop at that point. Filling all this in with stone dust will hold the majority of the mud in that direction. And then once the rain is stopped, I can actually continue my process of cleaning and pushing the mud off in that direction. So at this point, I'm gonna set a time lapse and pour out some of this stone dust on the patio, push it in with a broom, push broom, and I wet it very well so that it creates a slurry, and push it around with the push broom and fill in all the cracks. It'll bring it up to almost the height of the top of each one of these blocks. Once I get all of these set to the point where I want to stop, then I'll go back and show you how to actually adjust them. So now I'll start the time lapse and you'll see the 3 steps of the process. I'll pour down some aggregate, I'll wet it really well and turn it into a slurry, get it really wet, and then I'll push it around with the broom and fill in all the cracks So for the sake of this video, you can see how much of the patio stays dry versus how much gets wet, and where the actual corner of the roof stops, which is right about here. So this gives you an idea of where the weeds will start and grow and where they will stop, because this never gets dirt. This never gets rain, or very little rain. So any seeds that actually drop in the aggregate here won't really grow. But the seeds over here will. And any little bit of dirt provides enough nutrients for the seed to start taking and start growing. GoPro, stop recording. So during that time lapse, as you can see, I didn't want to just sit around and wait for the puddle to drain. So I went down the other end and started pushing those blocks around to break the edges and smooth them out so that you can walk around in bare feet. Right now, with the little bit of stone that's on the top, it may hurt your feet a little bit. It's not too terrible, but when you get cut by that edge, the sharp edge of the actual paver, it is painful on the bottom of your feet. This is where I'm going to stop this video, and I will do a couple short videos on how to level each one of these blocks.